Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher, Representatives Ann Johnson, who is here tonight, and Senator Joe Heckman, former Senator John Whitmire, and Mayor Andy Chan with Southside Place, Mayor of Southside Place, for their continued support of this project. This project truly reflects what can be accomplished when local, state, and federal leaders work together. I'd like to recognize our council members who are here tonight, Mayor Pro Tem John Montgomery, Councilmember Shannon Carroll, Councilmember Clay Brett, and Councilmember Matt Hart. As many of you know, and you're going to hear a little bit more about this later, this project has been in the making for over 20 years, and one that I've been particularly passionate about during my tenure as mayor. It is going to affect 1,500 homes and businesses in the central district, and this is going to be one of our biggest projects. I know we say it about every project. Buffalo was big. This has been a piece of infrastructure that, if you look at it, is falling in, and we're getting it brand new, thanks to the people I just mentioned. Tonight, you're going to hear a presentation from project officials from Flood Control District, and I know that's why you're here, because they've got a lot more specifics. After the presentation, there'll be stations that you saw outside when you walked in to represent different sections of the project. If you have questions, a subject matter expert on each of these sections will be there to talk to you. So I'm going to introduce Emily Woodell, who is the Chief External Affairs Officer, and Melissa Myers, who is the Engineering Division Manager. So I'd like to introduce you to Emily first.
Thank you so much, Mayor Sample. Thank you all for being here tonight. We are so excited to be here, and a special thank you, of course, to the City of West University Place for hosting us and for inviting us to speak with you about the status of this important project. We understand how important this project is to the community, and like Mayor Sample said, it's been a long time coming. So we're thrilled to share some details this evening and answer your questions. As Mayor Sample said, we'll have a presentation in the room by my colleague Melissa, and then we'll break and be able to answer more specific questions out in the hallway afterward, including some maps where you can point to your own homes and really look at, get down into the nitty-gritty of those details. I would be remiss, I know Mayor Sample thanked a lot of folks, but I would be remiss for not thanking our elected officials for their support of this project, both at the state and the federal level. It really does take all of us to make projects like this happen, and I know this will be transformative for the area. So thank you, and thank you for your support. So I'll now turn the podium over to my colleague Melissa Meyer to share some additional information about the Flood Control District and this project. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Hello, everyone, and thanks again for having us here tonight. Before I present on specific details of this project, I want to go over a little bit of background information about the Harris County Flood Control District to set the stage for our discussion tonight. The Harris County Flood Control District is a special purpose district created by the Texas legislature in 1937 in response to devastating floods that hit the Houston area in 1929 and 1935. The Flood Control District is governed by the Harris County Commissioners Court and works closely with other entities in our region, such as Harris County and the City of Houston. The organization was created in part to serve as a local partner to leverage federal funding for flood damage reduction projects. But our mission has since expanded since our founding, leading to billions of dollars in federal, state, and local funding, federal, state, and locally funded infrastructure improvements in the grounds. The mission of the Harris County Flood Control District is to provide flood damage projects that work with appropriate regard for community and natural values. And one of the most difficult challenges we face is constructing effective projects that are sensitive to community and natural values in highly urbanized areas. While the Flood Control District plays a critical role in flood risk reduction, we are one of several entities involved in these efforts in our region. When rain falls on your roof, it flows through several jurisdictions, such as streets and drains managed by Harris County Engineering Department, a municipal utility district, or a city such as West University Place, before it flows into a larger channel, such as Poor Farm Ditch, that the Flood Control District owns and maintains. To fully construct flood risk reduction projects across the county, we need to rely on partnership funding from a variety of sources. And this graphic here illustrates the many sources of those partnerships, including federal, state, and local funding that the Flood Control District is working to secure for Harris County. Now, each agency has its own definition of eligible projects and its own requirements for local match funding, so the Flood Control District works diligently to match specific projects to the right partnership opportunity. So Harris County Flood Control District is, in the surrounding area, is flood prone for a number of reasons. Namely, we experience extreme rainfall events, including tropical storms and hurricanes. Our area is largely made up of flat and slow draining land. And finally, we see large concentrations of clay soils that don't soak up excess rainfalls very quickly. So a watershed is a geographical region of land that drains to a common channel or outlet. Harris County has 23 main watersheds totaling approximately 1,800 square miles and more than 2,500 linear miles of channel. To put that in perspective, 2,500 linear miles is approximately the distance from New York all the way to California. And every single watershed has its own characteristics and needs. And as you know, Poor Farm Ditch is located here in the Brays Bayou watershed, and the red pin on the map shows exactly where Poor Farm Ditch is located in relation to the watershed. So Brays Bayou watershed is an urbanized watershed that covers about 127 square miles and 121 miles of open streams, including the primary streams, Brays, and tributaries channels of Keegan's Bayou and Willow Waterhole Bayou. Brays Bayou flows all the way from Fort Bend County to the confluence at the Houston Ship Channel. Comprehensive planning for flood protection in the watershed and construction of flood damage reduction projects on and along Brays Bayou has occurred in the past and continues today. And severe flooding in the watershed has occurred on average at least once every decade. The Harris County Flood Control District partnered with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on a major flood damage reduction project called Project Brays. Project Brays was a multi-year, $480 million project that substantially reduces the risks associated with flooding to tens of thousands of residents in Brays Bayou, along with many businesses and institutions in the area. And that's a great example of one of the funding partnerships that I had mentioned earlier. So now let's turn our attention to the focus of our meeting tonight, Poor Farm Ditch. We realize that many of you are familiar with this project as it's had a very long history. However, some of you might be new to the area, and so I want to start with some background before I get to where we are today. Poor Farm Ditch is a tributary to Brays Bayou, and the Flood Control District's official name for Poor Farm Ditch is Unit D111-00-00. It's a concrete lined channel that provides drainage to approximately 1,330 acres of the highly developed Brays Bayou watershed. Poor Farm Ditch was constructed in 1952, and it's one of the first concrete lined channels in the county. And today, it is currently the oldest in the county. Over time, the reinforced concrete pavement has deteriorated and significantly buckled at several locations. As you know, the concrete channel lining is failing and has exceeded its useful life. Continued failure could result in new or continued property damages to West University Place and Southside Place, potentially continuing to impact residents of both cities. So the design for this channel improvement The design for this channel improvement project was initiated back in 2015. Originally, the project was intended to address sorely needed maintenance of the channel. However, as our studies progressed, we realized we had an opportunity to increase the channel's capacity as well. In 2019, the project was put on 90% design hold to implement additional engineering efforts and to formalize an agreement amongst all stakeholders. At that time, our timeline was contingent on funding support. Necessary funding for the project was secured by summer of 2023, including local, state, and federal dollars. In October of 2023, an interlocal agreement among the cities of Southside Place, West University Place, and the Harris County Flood Control District was approved by Commissioners Court and work on the project resumed. As I mentioned, securing the necessary funding was critical in order for this project to resume. And this slide here acknowledges the various funding sources that together allow the project to move forward. $5.7 million comes from the Flood Control District and includes funding from the 2018 bond program. The cities of West University Place and Southside Place each have contributed $150,000. And $16.9 million comes from the Texas legislative allocations through State Representative Ann Johnson, State Senator Joan Huffman, and former State Senator John Whitmire. The remaining $9,886,000 was secured by Congresswoman Lizzie Fletcher through federal community-directed funding through FEMA. Thank you to Representative Johnson's office and to Congresswoman Fletcher's office for your ongoing support. With our total funding of nearly $33 million in place, the project can finalize design and finally move into construction. So let's take a look at what this project entails. The project will reconstruct Poor Farm Ditch between Bel Air Boulevard and University Boulevard, which will increase the capacity and flow of the existing channel during heavy rainfall events. This work will include reconstruction and widening of approximately 3,100 linear feet of the existing concrete-lined channel. This means that the concrete within the project limits will be removed and discarded. The channel will be reconstructed with new concrete to new specifications, increasing the width of the channel from 28 to 40 feet at its widest part. You can see here that the existing grounds and the channel are represented by the dotted line. And the new channel you see in the exhibit is going to be wider so it can convey more stormwater. The cross section shown here is an example of what it might look like at its widest point. As elevations along the project limits change and vary, we might construct a modular wall along some segments of the channel. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Again, you can see the width of the reconstructed channel is about 40 feet wide, but there's a greater difference in elevation from the top of the channel to the property lots. Because of that, we need to build up the land on the sides of the channel, and we're going to do that by bringing in high-quality fill and compacting it in place. We will also build a modular wall system when we build up the sides of that channel. So a modular wall system is simply a type of retaining wall system that's constructed using precast interlocking blocks. In this exhibit, you can see the modular wall at the top of each side of the channel on either side of the channel. The rendering on this slide is an example of how the modular wall might look. Depending on the elevation, the wall may consist of 1, 2, or 3 blocks stacked on top of each other. So on this slide, you can see the concrete channel paving with the modular wall placed on top. You can also see a maintenance access path between the modular wall and the channel that will allow for flood control employees to access the channel for maintenance purposes when needed. And a guardrail will be installed for their safety. In this image, you can also see a storm sewer outfall pipe in the side of the channel. This is an outfall from the city's storm sewer system and not backyard drainage. Since we're reconfiguring the channel, we will also adjust the existing city outfall pipes from the storm sewer infrastructure in the area, bringing them up to our current standards. In instances where fill is brought in, the grading will be sloped so that drainage from the properties will go to the streets and not to the channel. Drainage from residential properties must be directed towards the street and not flow directly into the channel. This is in compliance with flood control regulations and also helps ensure that we do not negatively impact the modular wall or channel infrastructure. As I mentioned, the completed project will include improved access for ongoing maintenance. Gated vehicular access ramps will be constructed at points near West University United Methodist Church and near Bel Air Boulevard. I'd also like to address questions about residential fencing and property disturbance. Because of the nature of this project, specifics will vary from lot to lot. But generally speaking, if a yard is beyond the flood control district's right-of-way and is disturbed by construction activity, the contractor will restore the fence or yard in kind. If a yard or fence within the flood control district right-of-way is disturbed by construction activity, the contractor will not restore it. The contract does include construction fencing, and the contractor will be responsible for securing the site throughout the duration of the construction activities. After the presentation, please visit our stations out in the hallway for more detailed information on the design or any specific questions you might have. So the reconstructed portion of the channel will increase the effective flow area of the channel, therefore increasing the conveyance capacity from approximately a 10-year storm event to a 50-year storm event. The flood control district is what we call a no adverse impact agency, and this means that we will never take a flooding problem from one area and move it to another. In this instance, we cannot allow increased conveyance capacity in Poor Farm Ditch to negatively impact other homes or neighborhoods. To offset the impact of increased conveyance capacity, we need to mitigate for these improvements. For this project, the mitigation needed to offset the channel's increased capacity is already in place at the City of Houston's Meyer Stormwater Detention Basin, located at 610 in South Braesville. So no additional mitigation is going to be required for these increases in flow or water surface elevations. An additional benefit of the channel's reconstruction to yield increased capacity is also going to allow us to improve our access to maintain the channel in the future. So let's take a look at where we are today. As I mentioned, the project design is currently completed at 90%. Survey work is undergoing and at about 70% complete, and we expect that remaining survey work to be completed by early May. This survey work will validate the conditions are the same as they were back in 2019 when the project was put on hold. For example, the surveys might identify any changes in conditions, including new encroachments or any other changes to the area since 2019. Identified encroachments will need to be removed prior to the start of construction, and the city will be reaching out to you to communicate with residents regarding these encroachment issues. Right of entry letters were sent to impacted property owners in February, so you would have received a letter if survey work needs to be completed at your property. With that, let's look at our upcoming milestones and timelines. As I mentioned, we expect that additional survey work to be completed in May, and we expect to receive updated design plans in July with a final design submittal in September. We anticipate construction beginning in spring of next year, and we estimate construction to be about 18 months for completion. Prior to construction, the Flood Control District will hold a pre-construction public meeting on this project, so we'll be able to share all the construction details that we know at that time. And that's going to include items that we know you will be interested in, such as construction timelines, work hours, traffic impacts, and things of similar nature. Construction details won't be known until the project is awarded to a construction contractor. It's the contractor who determines the construction schedule and approach. Generally speaking, though, we know that this type of work is typically done in segments, with work starting in one segment before they move on to the next section. Typically, contractors start working on the downstream segment of a channel and work their way upstream. So generally speaking, we anticipate the contractor to begin work on the channel near Bel Air and work their way towards University. Residents impacted by construction will be notified in advance of the construction timeline and details. Currently, we expect to hold this pre-construction meeting sometime in late fall 2024. But between now and then, we will continue to update the webpage for this project on our project website at hcfcd.org/C12. The Flood Control District welcomes comments and questions about this project throughout our online comment form and on our website, which you can see the address here on our slide and on the QR codes around the room. And those QR codes will take you directly to that website. You can also contact the City of West University Place for updates or comments, and they will share those comments with us as well. As Mayor Sample mentioned earlier, representatives from the Flood Control District will be at stations in the lobby during the open house portion of tonight's event, and we look forward to speaking with you. Again, thank you so much for having us.